Hey, this is Amir Borman. This is the daily 10 segment of the Talent Tango podcast.
Yep, we're here.
We're here. And we do this every day.
We do. Well,
Not on the
5 days
weekends.
a week.
We could do it on the weekends.
We could, but we don't.
No, we don't. So we want to talk today about how lots been made about candidate experience, right? Everything about candidate experience, worrying about it, does it have an impact? Does it not? And I was reading an article over the weekend talking about how
It was legit because it was Forbes article, so it was credible.
I don't know about credible from Forbes, but the concept made me dig a little bit more to really, start looking at where this is going, and it is what I think as well. And I think it's what you think, but that the brand is defined by those experiences. Why that has come about is simple. Before, the brand was built on word of mouth, right?
Right.
Whoever you knew in your community, the 10 people that went there, they talked about it, built brand, built, loyalty. Now, there's so many avenues that your experience gets distributed, good or bad, gets
Well, if you
distributed.
think
That's
about
your brand.
Yelp, right? That's kind of like the word of mouth platform that kind of started a lot of reviews and whatnot, right? Or one of the major ones. So I think it's looking at platforms like that have taken word of mouth now, and because of technology, have now applied it to a bigger scale.
I still think word of mouth might be as powerful as any other
It is.
platform because people will talk about in passing, people will listen in passing, and may not ever make it on social. But you talking to your friends about some experience interviewing someplace might alter the way they view that experience.
I've never left a review about Raising Cane's on Yelp, but I've definitely told at least 10, 15 friends, you need to try it. So yes, word of mouth is still very
Word of
powerful.
mouth. So I kind of, when this article was talking about how, moving forward, the experience is so important and the experience network, understanding the metrics behind it, the data points, so that your brand is protected, is cared for, is building in and of itself in terms of the value it's providing, all that stuff. I think that's where on the candidate side, a lot of times we really talk about candidate experience, and I think people might be looking at that as, how did the interview go? How, timely was the feedback? I think it goes beyond that from the standpoint of when that person walks in the lobby, how they're greeted, what's offered to them, making sure that, if it's over lunch, you've taken care of, lunch parameters. I think all those little things go far more in terms of just some of the high level experience stuff. And you mentioned, I think, in another podcast, being in the elevator next to the other person could be exactly like they might see something, hear something, a phone call. And it's difficult because you can't protect against
Sure, of course
every
not.
second people are out and about, but that person might have a negative experience and he will tell somebody.
Well, I think, in customer service related, organizations, there's a net promoter score, right? So a lot of times you'll reach out to your clients and say, hey, can you do this survey for us? I don't think what's happening a lot of times is there could be agency recruiters and even internal. They don't even have the time or bandwidth to reach out to tell somebody, hey, you got passed on. My point was there needs to be an outreach to survey the people that are your customers, interviewers and interviewees, right? So folks that are coming in, those are your customers. You need to know how their experience was to then be able to improve it, right? One, you have to have a set guideline that you're using as a rubric, but how much feedback are you actually trying to get from the initial, how did you like our outreach just to get in touch with you, right? To Amir's point, hey, did you, if there's any dietary restrictions, do you even before an onsite, hey, can you please let us know or fill this out? We really want to get to know you. So there's so many things that you could assess on, but you're not even asking the audience
So
what
there's
their opinion is.
well, so here's some of the issues with that, right? So the candidates are might not be willing participants.
Sure, to a
Okay.
degree.
And there's a reason why this is a little bit more challenging than if you're selling a widget on your website or you're a barber shop and you want to understand if people are happy with yours. Your customers coming back in 30 days, maybe 2 weeks. I don't know how often you want a haircut, 4 months, whatever it is, your frequency, they're going to come back. If you're buying something on a subscribe and save through Amazon, there is a frequency and a cadence to somebody purchasing or, going
I
into
agree
a
with that.
restaurant. With jobs and candidates, typically the ideal scenario is it's not once every 6 months
Agreed.
unless it's a contractor who's constantly turning over, and those exist, freelancer, but lots of the candidates, when they land, they know that they don't have to come back to the table for a couple of years.
Right.
So they really don't have a huge vested interest in the outcome or providing that feedback, and that becomes a little bit the challenge of why you get so much the negative on Glassdoor, but very little bit of the positive, because gal who's got the positive, he's done. Got the dream job, happy with the job, started the job, is gonna be there a couple of years. Next time back on the market, they're viewing it as those people that was dealing with, I probably won't be dealing with, and they'll
Sure.
be all net new relationships.
Well, I think people do exit interviews. I think those still exist, but I don't know if there's like an initial interview, right? So, what did you like about our courting process, about our interview process, about, onboarding even after a weekend? So, I think there's things you could do with the candidates that you do end up securing that you're still not even doing. So, I think, yeah, it might not be in somebody's interest to take the time to do a
Well, it's
survey
not
if they
even
didn't.
interest. I think it's mindset. I think,
But if they got hired, you would think they would give
if
you
they
the
got
time to tell
hired,
you how they like the process or if there's anything they could see as
sure.
improvements, right?
Well, but that becomes a super small. First of all, that's a self-selecting, group of people you're talking about, because they're all the ones who got hired, so they're in
Right.
a. But I think the problem is you'd have a very small sample size. Now, again, if you're really conducting exit interviews, you're getting feedback for the process to understand areas to improve. I can understand that, but the volume of candidates, depending on the organization, obviously smaller
Yeah, it might
ones,
be hard.
more burden, a little bit harder. And again, I think the mindset for candidates though, and this could be just it is a mindset because, it's become once the relationship in recruiting is done and the candidate thinks that in a couple of years they're not coming back to the market, do they need that relationship? Because the recruiter might not be there, right? The company might not be there.
Yeah, and I think, obviously there's interchangeable parts, but if you're trying to make sure that your brand is getting represented based on the
Gotta
customer.
capture the data points.
Exactly, right? You can't know if you're doing well unless you have some sort of baseline of grading or getting scaled on. So I think the key is what are you going to use to figure out how this experience is going for your candidate pool? And every candidate pool is different and they have different behaviors and different wants that they like versus a different set, right? Engineers
Absolutely.
might be different than financial accountants. They might be different than construction workers. Everybody has their kind of nuances of what they're going to like in their interview process, and what are you doing to make sure that you're actually trying to get some data around that?
Well, and I think that's where if you are actually doing this and you're capturing data points specific to the groups that you're interviewing for,
Sure.
right? So if you're hiring your accounting team's always hiring your engineering team. If you're, within engineering, the specifics of it, and the makeup and you're asking questions to really refine for the audience, then I think at least maybe, that you can, get some value back from the candidate because they realize it's pretty specific to them, you know? We all get the surveys of, "Hey, will you stay on the line, and answer a couple of surveys." How many people really do that? Not as much, but also the volume's higher. So I think there's some things that work in the favor of, uh, being able to capture data points in outside of candidates. But I think if you're talking about an organization with 100 people, you probably interview enough where if you're making a concerted effort to, again, define the data points and to capture them, then I think you probably can be more
Yeah, well, I think
successful.
you have to define what you want that experience to be for your candidate, and then that's going to help define the brand, right? So you can work backwards to figure out where you should be maybe asking questions or trying to get some feedback from candidates, right? So you don't need to have like a 10 survey question. It could
No.
be like, hey, what are the most important things that we need to focus on? Because with this data, we can really help improve our brand.
Yep, that's it. So for today, I am curious if you're in recruiting, what are you doing to capture those data points? Like in internal recruiters love to know, are they if you have a bigger company, are you factioned in terms of the distinct groups, or you're just asking a general, maybe exit interview to understand?
Sure.
Um, Let us know. Leave us some feedback. We'll be back again.